Hey, welcome back to the Travel Ones podcast. I have a recurring guest. I get to call him that now. Chad Hardy. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Awesome.
We have still have CEO, entrepreneur, and now we have author. The Law of Zeros, a new book came out, what, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago?
It came out, well, as of today, it's been a week.
Yeah. So how's it feel? How's it feel to have the book out finally?
Well, it's one of those things where you work so hard for so long, and then it's finally here, it's out, and then it almost feels a little anticlimactic because you're expecting, I don't know, some sort of pomp and circumstance parade, something coming down the street, congratulations. And that hasn't happened, but the sales have happened. So that's really great. Like it's an Amazon bestseller already.
Yeah.
I'm right out of the gate. So that's a huge accomplishment for me, especially being a first-time author and essentially unknown in this
Yeah.
space. So it's pretty exciting. And kudos to my publisher for helping me put this together. And hopefully it's a success because I really believe in its message. And I think anybody who hears its message, that it can actually do some good for them in their life.
And yeah, it's kind of cool because it's a title that, I mean, you get to say forever that you're an Amazon bestseller author.
Right. Yeah.
Forever.
Things forever.
Yeah. I mean,
Now let's get to number one. Then I can be a number one Amazon. Right now, I'm ranking at number two in one of
are
my
you
categories.
really?
I am, and it's been there for it's been in that 2 to 3. I'm like, I'm me and Leslie Jordan are back and forth. Sometimes he's two, sometimes I'm three, two. Right now he's number three, I'm number two, in the category that we're in together. And but the coolest thing is that it's ranking as one of the top 100 in self-help, new age.
Oh, that's awesome.
And every time I check, it moves. One time it was number 4, then it dropped to number 40, and then it'll be number 60. But it's been in the top 100 for the entire week. So
Pretty
just
special.
an hour, maybe it's number 3 right now. But I just need to hit that number 1, and then it'll forever be flagged as a number 1.
There you go.
We'll get there. Yeah,
Well,
my publicity got a little bit trumped by the natural disasters that are happening right
yeah.
now. My heart goes out to those affected. It's just wild. So right now I'm just kind of taking a little bit of a back seat, and we got to get through that.
A lot of those people could use your book.
Yeah, they could, because my book is about some tools that'll help you manage your life. But right now, they need to take care of
Basics.
exactly, the basics. Where are you going to live for the next while? Where are you, what are you going to do with your kids, your schools? I mean, there's a lot of things that they.
Jobs. A lot of people that, I was thinking it's like Palisades, and then, I mean, you have landscapers, you have contractors, you have all the people that worked in those homes, on those homes, around those homes. So the people lost their homes, which is horrific. Because obviously, my wife and I, we talk about everything in here would be gone. And like, what would we do? But then all the people that work around here, they have no jobs. So, and I mean, they're not going to need landscaping for a while.
I know. Yeah. So, it's one of those things where now's the time, if any, when you're in situations of crisis like this, you really need to be in a neutral um, place in your life so
Yeah.
that you can know exactly what you need to do. And that's kind of the premise of my book is literally about getting to neutral so that you can find your authentic self. But in times of crisis, if we can get to zero, that I call it, and be neutral, then the knowledge will come in ways of inspiration so that you know what you need to do. And essentially everything will work out. You will rise again, you will be where you're supposed to be, and life will hopefully be more triumphant for you, when you get through these types of tragedies. So, for sure, having tools to manage these types of traumas and crises are paramount.
And we talked briefly before is, your book absolutely applies towards people that travel. I mean, I've now had several people on my show that hate to travel. They have a fear, they have a phobia of
Mhm.
actual, like, of being on an airplane. So, I mean, I've couple country singers that won't fly. I'm like, well, how do you tour? And we just drive.
Yeah, I mean it's a real fear.
That book, your book would help them too.
Yeah, maybe we should say
There
what
it is.
it's called, the law of zero.
Yeah,
So it's a concept that essentially zero is this neutral space and energy. You could call it by a lot of different names. Some people may want to call it nirvana. Um, depending on what faith you are, maybe you want to call it God. It really, essentially, it's a neutral space, and it is a powerful space. It's where I say everything, every thought, every idea, every creation comes from this space, and it returns to it. And
yeah,
if we can get in alignment with it, then we can overcome our fears. We can manage our life better, because no matter how happy we are or how in great alignment we are with our career and the things that we want to accomplish, we still are going to have pitfalls, just like what's happened in Los Angeles. These things are not predictable, and they could happen to anyone at any time. And so when these things do happen, how do we manage?
yeah.
And just like with travel, I mean, I travel all the time. And anybody who travels as much as I do, I'm pretty much, high status on two airlines. That's how much I travel. And you're always going to have those days where you get to the airport and it's chaos.
Yeah,
And especially right now, I live in San Diego, and one of my airlines that I have status with is Southwest. And so I fly them quite frequently. And if you haven't been to San Diego and flown, in Terminal 1, where Southwest is housed, they're in the middle of a of a rebuild, or building a new terminal. And so in the interim, everything is mashed into two non-connecting terminals, and it's chaos. And the lines for security, even when you have pre-check, can be out the door. And so you walk into these situations, and you're like, just, and you can feel the panic,
yeah. Am I
everybody.
going to make my flight? Yeah,
Yeah. So if we have these tools to kind of, get us neutral, where if we are able to accept the worst case scenario, like when we're traveling, what's really the worst case scenario? You might miss your flight.
yeah,
Of course, we don't want that to happen, but if we can accept that as a possible reality, and then also accept the fact that everything's going to run perfectly, somewhere in the middle, you're going to find neutral, and everything just has a way of working out. I mean, I could tell you countless stories where, I mean, here's a great example. I was flying from Las Vegas to back to San Diego. Not a super big trip, but I wanted to go home early. So I got to the airport, and they put me on standby. And it looks like I was going to get on the flight. And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, they're paying people to get off the
get off the
plane.
flight. Yeah,
They paid three people to get off the plane. And I thought, well, I'm not getting on this flight. And then all of a sudden, I hear my name come over the PA. And well, before I continue the story, I should say I was okay with it. I wasn't
right.
angry. I wasn't getting all caught up in the frustration of it all. I was just like, okay, I accepted it. But then I still thought, no, I'm getting on that plane. I still had that in my mind. I'm getting on that plane.
They haven't said no yet.
Right. Well, my name was called over the PA, and I go to the desk, and they hand me a ticket, and I get on the plane. And then
Perfect.
if you've flown Southwest, you know what that means. If you're the last one on the plane, you're sitting in the back in the middle.
Yeah.
I walk in, and row 3, there is an aisle seat waiting for me. And I sit down and I take it, and I fly my 45-minute flight to San Diego. So these things, like these types of things happen to me all the time, because I have learned that if I can accept the worst case scenario, and
Right.
I also accept the best case scenario, and then put my energy in that, but also not letting go of the fact that I'm okay with however this day works out, it always 100% of the time works out for me. Only one time in all my travels have I had to sleep in an airport.
Yeah, I haven't had to do that. I had one. I've had two that were really close. One was a tornado watch in Kansas City,
Mm-hmm.
and my flight was like at 7:05, and the tornado watch was supposed to have a 8. When they have that, they shut down the airport.
Oh.
So I was like, man, just don't be late. Don't be a late flight. Don't be a late flight. I don't want to sleep in Kansas City in an
Oh,
airport.
yeah. Well, what happened to me was an interesting thing because, certain times of the year when the weather's going to be bad, if I have a connecting flight, I like to try to get on the flight that's a fly through. So you don't get off the plane,
Yeah, yeah,
but you still, you know, you have to stop. And anybody who travels a lot, if you always fly direct if you can. If you have
yep.
to stop somewhere, there's a good chance that you're going to be delayed somewhere along the way, especially if it's a later flight, like
And
if
your
the
bags are screwed.
oh, right. Well, that's why I usually try to just do carry on if I can. Then you're not committed to your luggage. Well, I was flying from Orlando to San Diego, and we had a stopover in Dallas, but I didn't have to get off the plane. Well, there was if this was the time when they had that freak snowstorm a couple years ago, and so the airport had to shut down for a little while.
Yeah.
So they flew us to another airport somewhere in Texas. I can't remember where, but we were just sitting there waiting to refuel and then be able to go. And I thought, well, I don't care. This is my plane that's going to get me home. So we're finally able to take off. We land in Dallas, where they announce that all San Diego passengers need to get off the plane
Ooh,
because if you know what that means, they've timed out
yeah.
the crew.
The crew. Yeah.
And at this point, it's like 11 p.m. at night, and there's no such thing as a hotel at 11 p.m. at night. And they rebooked me for a 6 a.m. flight. So, and if you've ever had to spend the night in the Dallas airport, not the Fort Worth, the Love Field,
Yeah.
it that is when they do all the cleaning. So there is a good no good night's rest in that airport. It's very loud, and all you hear is the cleaning crew cleaning and mopping the floors, vacuuming and all this. But it was cold, so it was freezing. So I found, and this is a little hack, if you ever have to sleep in the Love Field Airport in Dallas, there is a pet area.
Ah,
It's closed off from the main area that has a door, and it's quiet and it's warm. And the lights on, but nobody goes in there at that hour because who has their pet?
yeah.
And if they are, it might be one person, two people max, let's say, because I think one person did walk in. And there's a padded bench in there, and you can sleep. So a little tip if you're ever stuck having to sleep overnight and
Yeah.
die.
I'm flying there on Sunday.
Okay.
So I'll be there. I'll be in Dallas for a week.
Nice. Yeah.
So if
Dallas
I
is,
get stuck, I'm going to I'll look for the pet area.
yeah, it's on the way. It's in the hallway as you're leaving
Yeah. Yeah.
towards baggage claim. Yeah.
I'm going there next. I just looked at the forecast for next week. It's like, I think the highest it's going to be while I'm there is 38.
Oh,
And
I tell you.
I have 3 days of snow out of 6.
Yeah, Dallas weather is so bipolar.
Yeah.
If I can avoid laying over in Dallas, I will because the weather there is so unpredictable. And if I ever have a delay, it's usually because I've Dallas and also in the winter time, Denver. I try to avoid Denver.
That's where my company's located. So the worst delay I ever had was going from Denver to Dallas. And
Two of
it
the
was,
worst I just named.
yeah, I was supposed to land I think in Dallas at 7. I
Uh-huh.
got in at 11:30. So obviously all the rental cars were shut down. So I had to rent, which I had already paid for. So I had to Uber to my hotel and then Uber back in the morning to get my rental car. And then be at work at 9 in the morning.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you another kind of a nice little hack. Also, if you're ever flying into San Francisco, I do a lot of day trips where
Okay.
I fly in and fly out same day. People think I'm so bougie, like, what, you just go there for lunch? I'm like, well, kind of, but I am also working.
Yeah.
So, and there are certain times of year when the fog is really bad in San Francisco. So
The
if you're
summertime.
flying in, yeah, summer, if you're flying in thinking that you're going to land there in the morning, do your business, and leave later, and you absolutely 100% have to be there, I would suggest flying into Oakland
Oakland.
and taking the BART across because it's just too risky to if you need to land, especially in the morning time.
Down it. Yeah.
So if you have some flexibility, it's fine. But if you have like an absolute meeting you cannot miss, and you just be weary of the time of year that you might need to do that because that fog can I can't tell you how many times I've been to the airport and I see the flights to San Francisco are not just delayed, canceled.
Oh yeah, I used to live in Alameda, and I worked in the city, so I worked off Third and Army, and so I'd have to. So there were days I'd go in the morning, it'd be sunny on my side. I'd go over to work. I'd never see the sun because the fog was just so thick, and I was on the east side of the peninsula. Still never saw the sun. By the time and then I'd get home and it'd be sunny again, like just there in San Francisco.
Yeah, they have those little microclimates there.
Yeah.
Even here in San Diego, my office is close to downtown. I'm in Hillcrest,
Okay.
and then I live in Poway, and there's a 10
That's a
degree
drive.
difference. Yeah, it's about 30 minutes. Uh, there's a 10-degree difference in temperature from in both ways, hot and cold. So this time of year, it's very cold at night there, where here it's a little bit more, where my office is a little more mild. But then during the day, it gets really hot out there, which is great if you want to have a house with a swimming pool, because
Yeah.
everywhere else in San Diego, I think having a pool is pointless because it never gets warm enough. But up there, it does for sure. It hits those triple digits sometimes.
Well, even I know like El Cajon and the Santee will get warm, and then because I used to live in San Carlos, and like it would be a different temperature just from San Carlos to El Cajon.
You're like you're like the I mean, your travel podcast can just be where all the places in California you've lived.
Well, what's funny is yeah, I guess so.
You're like,
I
so out
haven't.
of all the places you've lived in California, what's your favorite?
Ooh, probably San Diego as a region.
Yeah, that's why I live here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to say. I mean, the up north is it's totally different. It's like a different state. Because I lived in Reno, and then I lived in Lake Tahoe for a little bit, and then I moved to the Bay Area with my now ex-wife, and we had two kids up there, and then we moved down south just to be near our grandparents and family and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I
I
didn't
mean,
like San Francisco.
yeah, a lot of people
It's a great place to visit, and like
yeah, a
what?
lot of people don't like the weather there, and a lot of I blame the San Franciscans. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah,
For inflating the housing market here in San Diego. Because every time I meet somebody new
they
that
came to
just moved here, guess where they moved here from?
yeah the city.
San Francisco, because they're the only ones that can afford to move here because they have so much equity in their home there. They
Yeah,
sell it. They've got a couple $1 million in cash equity. So they will ask two to $300,000 over asking for the house. I mean, that's what happened during COVID.
yeah.
My very dear friend, she's one of those that moved from San Francisco during COVID, but she was early COVID, like June of 2020,
Oh wow.
and she had just in fact, she wrote the foreword in my book, Monique, and she had just lost her husband to cancer and had two 4-year-old twin daughters. And she said, she just had a difficult time being able to manage that city with the restrictions and COVID. So
Yeah,
she moved down to San Diego, where she has, her mother is here and she has some family. And she bought a beautiful home in Solana Beach and paid, you know, let's just roughly say 1.2 million, which you think, wow, that's a lot of money.
nothing.
Well, now that house is worth probably 2.5.
Yeah,
And that happened just within a matter of a year or two. Um, and yeah, her next door neighbor, she was an older woman and passed away. And they sold her house and they got 2.5 for the neighbor's house. So it's the San Francisco people that are driving up the prices here in San Diego. So we need to spread a rumor that it's a horrible place to live and never come here because the traffic is getting really bad. And where my office is, they're building high rises everywhere, and now there's no place to park, and because they're not putting up parking in the structures for the people amount.
Parking costs extra. Yeah,
Yeah, and then finally, though, the one place you can park for 2 hours, you just have to go out there and make sure. Now they're like closing it off. There's a sign right now, no parking, because they're making it into some plaza. I'm
oh,
like, they're really discouraging people from having cars in San Diego. So I'm going to say that you don't want to move here if you have a car.
it's terrible.
Terrible. Stay away.
Stay away. I always joke with people. San Francisco is the only city I know of where the homes get cheaper the closer you get to the ocean.
Oh yeah, because it's so cold.
Yeah, because Ocean Beach, like the homes were literally cheaper as you got closer.
Yeah, it's
They
true
would see the
because
sun.
yeah, I actually thought about moving to San Francisco before I moved to San Diego, and I was looking at, rental prices because I wasn't going to commit to buy anything. So I thought, and the cheapest homes that you could buy or rent in San Francisco were in Pacifica,
Yeah,
which is right there on the ocean. And I'm like, wow, why is this so inexpensive? And then I realized, oh, because you're living in fog
yeah,
most of the time. Yeah.
yeah. Usually it's just the opposite, especially like in San Diego.
Oh yeah.
You want oceanfront, you're going to pay premium.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So, what made you want to write the book? I'm really curious. I mean, that's a process.
You know, so I've been through a lot in my life. I think all of us, every single person has a story, right? Everybody's
Yeah,
had their struggles. There's no such thing as hierarchy and suffering. We've all had our fair share of ups and downs. If you talk to anybody sitting on a park bench, they're going to tell you, the struggles of their life. And so mine, I wouldn't say were like, uh, necessarily extraordinary difficult, but they were still like, trying to find your authentic self, and when you're living in systems of control can be very difficult. And I started writing a book about forgiveness. Now, a little backstory about me: I was raised LDS, or the Mormon faith, and I actually got kicked out of the church and had my BYU degree taken away uh, through a crazy loophole. And that's a whole nother story in itself. But it pretty much left me in no man's land, because when you're raised in that type of faith, you're raised that that's an absolute truth. Like, they have
yeah,
all the answers to how you're supposed to live your life and where you're going. And I'm not discounting any of that, because if you can believe in something and gives you hope that gets you through the day, and it works for you, then by all means do it. But it wasn't working for me. And so it left me in this state of like, who am I? What's going to happen to me after I die? And what is like, what's the purpose in life?
yeah,
And I had a lot of time to like think about these questions. And the biggest kind of thing that the value of things that I've learned and experienced in my life is the value of forgiveness. And forgiving people who have trespassed against you, and then most importantly, forgiving yourself, because if there's anyone a horrible critic of who you are, it's yourself.
yeah.
And so I wanted to write a book about forgiveness, and I started to write. And I realized that I was just venting, and I'm like, I'm not ready to forgive. And this was back in 2009. So I put my writings to bed. And fast forward to 2019, so 10 years later, my good friend Quinn, who lives in Los Angeles, he called me up and he's like, Chad, I feel very strongly to tell you that you need to finish your book. And he had an idea that he should do some sort of program or TV series or something on like following stories of people who have forgiven, because it's powerful.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, he's driving down with his friend Yayoi, that they were friends from college, down from LA to San Diego to sit at my dining room, or my dining room table, to tell me that I really need to write this book. And so I Googled the title that I had titled my book, and would you believe it? Somebody wrote my book, like the concept, everything. It was. I'm like, well, somebody did it for me, which is funny because my grandfather used to always say, Chad, if you have a really good idea, you better act on it, because there's like a trap door at the
Yeah.
backside of your brain. And those ideas go out into the universe, and someone else is going to pick that idea up and they're going to do it.
Right.
Um, in fact, on that topic, Monique writes in her forward about an idea that we had back in 2004, 2005, about crowdfunding for starving artists, called
Oh,
Sponsor Moi. Well, this was before Patreon and GoFundMe and all these things. We had this multi-million-dollar idea that we didn't have the wherewithal to know how to even build a startup, tech
yeah.
startup. But that we had that idea, right? And that idea was out there in the universe, and somebody did it. So I was a little deflated about my book, knowing that it had already been done. So after they left back to Los Angeles, I sat there and I was kind of just meditating in my thoughts and just asking my inner knowing, like, what is it? Like, what's on the other side of forgiveness? There has to be something bigger and more powerful than forgiveness. And this is like out of some like sci-fi movie, but this voice that I've actually heard before in my life as a small child, as a female voice, spoke clearly into my ear and said, it's called the law of zero. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, who said that? You know, I don't know if you, and I promise you, I mean, it sounds woo-woo and weird and whatever. But it's the truth. That is exactly what happened. And I hear this voice. And I immediately got up and Googled law of zero, and all I saw was like math stuff. There was
Yeah.
what
Equations or whatever. Yeah.
and really nothing really, or like things about finances. There was nothing that would say this is some sort of spiritual awakening concept. And so I called Yayoi, and she's Japanese. And I said, I know the name of my book. I don't know what it's about, but I have the name. It's called Law of Zero. And I don't know what this means. And she said, oh, Chad, in Japanese culture, we have this thing called the Enzo. It's a handwritten circle, and it means the void, the nothingness. And that was my stepping off point.
Oh,
So then I started researching that and researching all kinds of ancient religions, and come to find out that all religions point to this kind of vast nothingness, really, that is not material yet creates material things. So as I started writing and researching, and I did bring in a researcher to help me,
okay.
and we would have weekly meetings, and she helped me put the whole book together. Her name's Emily. She's fantastic. And we had weekly Zoom calls for 3 years, all through COVID, where I would just dictate and talk, and these ideas would just start coming to me. And that's when I realized, okay, how do we get to zero? And then I found out that there's 5 entry points. There's 5 things you have to do, and 2 of those are the law of attraction. And I'm like, okay, I'm onto something here. And then I shared this with my good friend who's an acupuncturist, and he's like, "Oh, those are hand in hand with the 5 Chinese elements." And again, this is all stuff I'm not schooled in this
Yeah.
new age thought. I mean, I grew up believing it because my grandfather was very much into the law of attraction, and taught us these tools about how powerful our minds are, which I write about in my book. But really, it was there's more to it, because let me tell you, I was all about law of attraction. When The Secret came out, I couldn't like share that with enough people. It was
Yeah.
just because Rhonda Byrne had such a great way of creating a concept that I was very familiar with and putting it in very, very simple, tangible terms. And but the thing is, I would use these tools, I would attract great things into my life, but they end up becoming mirages. They would disappear as quickly as they would come. And good news would come, and it would essentially just fade away. And I started to realize that there's more to it. If you want these things that we manifest to stick and stay, we've got to fix the stuff underneath the surface that's broken. And this is where we have to take ownership of the things that have happened to us in our lives, and we have to start opening up awareness and finding out where in our lives are we holding on to things, clutching onto things that don't serve us, and we need to release those things so that these good things that we do bring into our lives, there's room for them to stay. And so once I discovered this and I applied it to my life, all of a sudden, all of these good things just stuck around. And then when bad things come, I recognize them, and I call them cyclones. And it's really easy to get caught up in these, um, and we can latch our emotions onto them, and they whisk us off to Oz.
There
And
you
I
go.
discovered when these types of things happen, and especially if we tie this back to traveling, when these cyclones happen, if we just get to zero, stay neutral, stay calm, seek shelter. Just like if there's a tornado coming, you're not going to try to fight it with a fire hose.
Yeah.
Get down and just, seek shelter. And and then eventually it'll just pass. And then you come out and you assess the damage and you move on, you
You
know.
know, so my show, I interview athletes and musicians, business people, and that if you think about the law of zero would work towards an athlete, and there's so many ups and downs. You're never at your peak performance. Musicians, there are so many downs in the music industry right now. A tour happens, it doesn't happen, and oh, we're going to get signed. Oh, we didn't get signed. So getting back to, and then obviously, as you know, in business, there could be laws of zero every day.
Yeah, no, honestly, the tools apply to everything in
Yeah.
every situation. And I'm very clear in my book that this is not going to make your life free of chaos. It will just make it easier to manage when those things come. I had a really awesome conversation yesterday with my high school drama teacher. She called me because she's reading the book right now, and she's like, "I have questions." She says, I'm talking about, I'm reading about take ownership, and I've read it over and over again because she says, I haven't have any like adverse things happen to me in my life that I need to forgive anybody. I had a great childhood. I had a great, upbringing and wonderful parents. Like nothing really bad happened to me as a child. And I said, that's awesome. There's a lot of people like that have come from incredible families and were protected from having those types of, what we call large T traumas that happen to us when we're children. And but I said, but there's still some beliefs that you have about yourself that are not serving you. For one of them, because I know she wants to write a book, and she just can't seem to get write this book. She's got a roadblock. And then through our conversation she realized, at one time I wrote something and someone told me that I was not a good writer. So
Sure.
that's a small T trauma. It's a belief system that someone planted into your reality, and then you believed it like it was a real truth, and then it becomes your truth. And I do talk a lot about this in my book that you know I call it our human story code. These are the building
Yeah.
blocks that build our perspective on life and how we see ourselves and how we perceive the world. And that was just one little block that was placed in her that made her think somewhere down the road she's not a good writer, and that's why she is not able to finish her book. And so when we think about things like that, for athletes or anyone who's starting a business, if you keep running into the same thing over and over and over again, you're hitting the same roadblock over and over again. You could even try a different route, but you're still hitting the same roadblock. You got to really analyze what is causing that roadblock. Where in my human story code is there uh, a block, that literally a block that tells me in when certain circumstances happen, I'm going to fail. And we all have them.
Yeah.
We all have them because the only reality we know is what's taught to us by our parents, by our schools, by our churches, by our communities, and then once we get older, by our own experiences, just by applying those things that we're taught to real life, and then we can pick and choose the things that we carry forward with us. But I think advice that I give anybody, even advice I have to remind myself of all the time, is when first of all, we create everything in our lives. Even if something happens to us that's out of our control, we still create our feelings about that. We
Yeah.
still create how we react to those things. So if we are able to really allow ourselves to be aware and to dig under the surface and get to that place where you can start seeing things from an outside perspective as your own life, you can actually take ownership of them. And if you can name them too, it's kind of like Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
Once they were able to name Rumpelstiltskin, their problems went away. And if we can name our traumas, big or small, and put a name to them and you identify them, our brains have a way of just going, up, that's a problem, get rid of it. And we can then start finding a solution around it, you know? So it's all fascinating stuff. You know, there's no like one correct way to get to zero, like I call it. There's no like specific module. And I think that's one thing about my book that's different. It's not like
Yeah.
a 10 steps to a better life. No, I'm just introducing a concept. And once you understand the concept, you can start applying its principles, and if anything, you just start becoming aware of your patterns. You start becoming aware of the things in your human story code that no longer serve you. And I promise you that if you take these things and you apply it to the littlest things, from a flight delay to an abrupt career change, to something traumatic happening in your life where you lose everything,
Yeah.
if you can apply these principles, you can get through it. And every single person that I've shared these principles with that have actually done the work, I have seen their lives change drastically. My own life being a testament of it. I used to live in victim mentality. I used to sit there and allow people to control the way I feel, and then with that control my actions. And once I realized that I'm in control, that I have all the power and I can own everything in my life, I then have the power to dictate exactly how I want to feel about certain things and release things when they no longer serve me. And that goes from to my business, to my travels, to my personal life, to my dating life. I mean, all of it,
Yeah.
all of it. But I'm not joking or like exaggerating when I say everybody who has applied these principles, I have seen them turn their lives around. And one being my friend Monique, who wrote, that's why she wrote the forward. She's
Yeah.
been like right there in the battleground with me as I was discovering these things. And, here she was trying to manage her life after the loss of her husband, and, a new, moving to a new city, now has to manage being a single mom, and dealing with the kids in their trauma of losing their father, all of it. It's a lot to manage, but these tools, I watched her rise from the ashes. And she now has a television show syndicated in California, called Wino TV. And it runs on CBS, I believe, every Saturday and Sunday, depending on where you are. But I've watched that like manifest in her life, as part of this rebuild. Um, and she no longer lives in suffering anymore. It's fascinating. And I've seen other people who've struggled to find their career, constantly, getting laid off, and they apply these principles. Next thing I know, they're like, not only do they find what they're looking for, it sticks around, it stays. Because there are times where, yeah, you'll get that new job, but then like a year later, you're back in the same place you were a year ago. And this stops that cycle, like stops it in its tracks if you do the work and you apply the principles.
Got to make the 5 years to write the book worthwhile now.
Exactly. Well, I was just talking to a friend today about this, who he read the book only because I wrote it. He's,
Yeah.
he thought, well, if you wrote a book, or if I want to read it. And so he had no idea what it was about. And he called me today. He's like, I'm on chapter 12. I can't believe this book, like, uh, is what it is. Cause he didn't realize it was, this type of a self-help and deep dive into like a lot of really deep topics.
Yeah.
And he started sharing with me, like his life and how he relates to these principles. And he really was like stuck on this ownership thing. I need to take ownership of, the things that are happening in my life. And I have a friend that I lost touch with, and he's always kind of put the blame in his court of why their friendship fizzled. And he says, well, I'm going to take ownership of the fact that, that it did fizzle, regardless whose fault it is. I'm going to take ownership of it because
Right.
it's my life. He says, I'm going to reach out to him. He said, in fact, I'm going to send him this book. So, it's but and the reason why I bring him up is because I think anybody who's willing and ready to hear the message of the book will hear it.
Right.
If The book sells 100 copies and that's all. It just reaches 100 people. As long as those 100 people improve their lives and the ripple effect moving
I was going to say
forward,
the ripple. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say to you. And you'll
then
never know about the ripples.
yeah, one thing, another, and another, another, and then
Yeah.
we don't pass our trauma on to our kids. It could stop with
Watch
that.
it come all the way full circle, and someone you just meet starts talking about the law of zero without knowing you wrote the book.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if enough people hear about it,
Yeah,
um, I feel like this book is going to be one of those that will. It's going to be like a slow roll,
be around.
and it's one of those that it'll stick around.
Yeah,
Because the principles actually work. If they didn't work, if it was just one of those where you go, okay, hum hum, that sounds great. It's kind of like how many times you scroll through your social media, those people post those little motivational quotes and
yeah,
you read it, and for 1 second, you're like, yes. And then you're on to the next. Oh, cool car. you know?
squirrel.
But if those who actually do the work, I call them zero heroes, they're the ones that are going to make this some sort of movement. And even if
Yeah,
the movement is small, I don't care. I'm not here to like change the world. Maybe I am. I don't know. The book came out a week ago.
yeah.
Uh,
A
but
good 7 days.
right, 7 days. Amazon bestseller. How cool. But it's, if there's just a small group of people on this planet that are taking ownership of
Yeah,
their lives and not pointing blame at everyone and everything around them. Imagine those few people that actually are doing the work. They're the ones that are lives will truly be enriched because you can have all the blessings of financial wealth and options in your life, but if you don't know how to manage life in general, um, the money's not going to buy you happiness. We
yeah.
know that. Some of the most miserable people that I've met are the ones that are the wealthiest. Not saying that money is evil at all. That's not what I'm saying. They're just it just doesn't make them happy. But I've also met super wealthy people that get it. They get the magic. They get it, and they're the most like, I mean, blessed beyond measures because not only do they have the means to have options, but they have the knowledge to live a really fulfilled, enriched life where they take ownership and um, they kind of beat to their own drum.
I totally agree. I've met a couple people that are worth 9 figures, and they don't focus on that.
No, it's about being, not doing.
Yeah, and that's what they focus on now. It's one guy still in the I need more. I need to make more. I need to make more. But the couple that I've met are like, no, we're good. It's about
You
happiness.
know, I'm to the point in my life. I'm 48 and turning 49 this year, and every year, you're one step closer to the end. And
Yeah,
I'm starting to realize I'm like, well, I want to just have experiences. I'm in the process of building a home in Poway, and if you've ever talked to anybody that's ever built a house in California,
you're gonna talk
well,
a whole bunch up here.
oh yeah, I know I feel bad for the people that lost their homes because just getting a permit is going to be,
Malibu is going to be a nightmare. But go
yeah,
ahead.
especially with the new the codes, the
Yeah,
fire. So you're dealing with a lot of different regulations and policies. So, for example, in California, new law is you have to have 100 feet of fire safety around your
right.
house,
Yeah,
defensible plants, so like ground covers, whatnot, and it has to be irrigated. Because I'm on like 2.5 acres, and I'm in a canyon. So yes, I'm like worried right now with these winds picking up that fire could ravage through. But I mean, I appreciate these types of regulations because they are going to protect my home if a fire ever does break out.
yeah,
But I'm having to worry, so I'm having to deal with that to make the California state fire codes happy. And then you're dealing with the Poway city codes where you can only grade so much of your house if it's sloped because it is on a hillside. So that doesn't really give you a lot. Even though you have 2.5 acres, you really can only grade 20,000 square feet, and
right.
10,000 square feet is just the driveway to get to where your plot is. So there's all this stuff, right? And it's been 2 years. to get it, and I still don't have a permit. And I'm sitting there going, is this what I really want? Do I do I really need this house? Or can I just live in my trailer on this property and be good? Or do I take that and just travel and see the world? You know,
Yeah.
I just got back from Japan right before Christmas and I'd never been there before. I was there for 10 days. And this was the first time I traveled somewhere and I wasn't like keen on sightseeing. I didn't see one temple. I woke up every day and all I cared about is I want to try something different to eat. It's pretty
Right.
one. I went on a food tour and everywhere that's all I worried about was eating or going to these little cool like bars. They had this
Cafes and yeah.
yeah, I was in Tokyo and they have this this little area where they have these little tiny micro bars. So they seat like 6 people. And that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the people. I wanted to see the culture. I
Yeah.
didn't want to see some, I don't know, man-made thing. And I'm realizing as I'm getting older that that's what I want to see when I travel. Like, do I really need all of this stuff? I mean, right now, all of my belongings are in a storage unit, 2 stories down in the ground. And sure, I missed my piano. I missed putting up my holiday decorations this year, but
Yeah.
I really love the fact that instead of putting up holiday decorations, I went to Japan
That's awesome.
and I got to experience a new culture. I got to experience new foods. I was naive thinking that everyone in Japan eats sushi. No, there was like no sushi. They eat soup, a
Awesome.
lot of ramen, and just I don't know, just and the polite culture of Japan is something that
Totally
we
different.
all could learn from. I dropped my scarf and it fell out of my. I had it stuffed in my jacket, and it fell out. And this gentleman ran full speed to chase me down to give me my scarf back. And I thought that wouldn't happen in New York.
No.
And
Or about anywhere.
right. And I mean, there are still kind people out there, but this is like
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
Anybody would have done that. Not just this man. Anybody would have done it. And I was talking to some locals because one thing I like to do when I travel is I like to meet local people. I use things like couch surfing. You know, you can do couch surf meetups and meet
Oh,
local
okay.
way. Or you can use the dating apps too. That's something I've done. And and people will meet up with you and take you around. And so I met some locals and they told me that no, that's just how we are. Like if they were telling me that one time he lost his phone, he like left it on the train, and someone tracked him down and delivered it to his house. And I thought that what?
Yeah.
They actually like hand delivered it to your house? They found where you I don't even know how this happened. My mind was like blown the whole time.
But I think it comes from a state of karma, though, right? Because they believe if they do that good thing, then good things will happen to them.
Yeah, they do. And also, these are things that are taught. They're taught as children, and
Yeah.
I think here in the U.S. we're a mixed bag of nuts, like no pun intended.
But literally.
We come all from different cultures,
Yeah.
and so not all of us are raised with the same exact values. For example, my mother always taught us that you leave a guest when you're a guest in someone's house, you leave it nicer than you find it. You always make the bed. You wipe the sink down. You wipe the mirror down when you leave. You
Yeah.
fold the towel even if it's dirty. You still make the bed even if it's dirty, unless they ask you to strip the sheets, whatever. But you leave it nicer than you found it. Well, that's the message. And I can't tell you how many house guests I have that they leave a mess. And I think
I,
does not everybody's taught this. In Japan, their culture has been really protected for thousands of years. They
yeah.
they don't have a lot of outside influence of culture in their communities, and so these cultures or these manners and this way of living is
It's
taught to
carried
everybody,
down.
and everybody buys into it.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when I flew I, to Tokyo. I had a nonstop on Japan Air, to Tokyo. And on the flight there, I would say that 90% of the flight was Japanese. I looked around, and
Yeah.
it was one of the very few Americans on this flight, and they were silent.
Yeah.
And if they spoke, it was a whisper. On the way home, very different. It was mostly Americans on the flight. And I'm assuming because it was like Christmas. So I'm like, that's weird. Why would it be one group of people to the other? But I think it was people, flying
Going on. Yeah.
home for their holidays. And they were the loudest. You don't realize how loud we are until you escape our culture for a while, or the lack thereof. And and it was so loud, and everybody was talking and blah 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 blah. I'm trying to sleep. And I thought, wow, what a difference. Even on the subways, everybody's very and we're crowded in there, like you're like this, but everybody's still very respectful of your space,
Yeah.
even if you are, you know, sandwiched into each other. Um,
That's what
to
my
get out,
daughter said about, she went there with her husband,
yeah,
and she said when they were on the trains, like you could tell who the Americans were because all of a sudden their volume was just louder and they were just like had to talk and they were, all the Japanese people were very quiet and very calm.
yeah. And the one thing, because my good friend Quinn, who's the one who told me to write the book, he actually lived in Japan in the 70s, and he had a little bit of a music career there. And so he speaks fluent Japanese. He's very very much understands their culture. So he kind of he's told me for years, kind of how they are. And even his friend Yayoi, she would tell me, like some of their customs and the way they are. And but he did say, he said, you never really know what they're thinking. Because even if they think that you're being extremely rude and belligerent, they're not going to say anything.
Right.
They're very, very polite that way. But it was for me, when I travel, I like to adapt as much as I can to the culture. I
Yeah.
like to be aware of my being in their space. And so I'm always walking, looking around. And one thing I noticed is like nobody's eating. No, like you're walking down the street, nobody's eating.
You're not supposed to eat.
I text my friend Quinn. I'm like, why is nobody eating? Like, no one's eating on the subway. And he said, oh, you don't do that. Don't eat. Don't walk and eat. So I'm like, I immediately put my sandwich down
Yeah.
because I didn't know, but I'm always aware. I'm watching how they behave because I want to make sure that I'm being respectful to their way of life, especially when you're dealing with a place like that where their culture is very, very distinct.
I'm excited to, we've been watching, what my wife and I have been watching a lot of walking tours of Japan
Mhm.
where guys just walking around with a camera. There's no trash.
Oh, there's no trash. This is the irony. There's no trash cans.
Cans. Yeah. You have to
So
carry
that
it.
was, and I would say my biggest frustration of being there was I can never throw my trash away.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly texting Quinn, like asking him questions,
Yeah.
uh, and and he's telling me, oh yeah, they teach you that you take your trash with you.
Yeah.
I mean, and even we were at a park, and then we're like, well, what do we do with this plastic like box of stuff that our salad came in? And, well, you carry it with you. So that's exactly what we did. And you just hope and pray you'll find a 7-Eleven or something that you can like go in. And when you're in like the neighborhoods where the people live, you'll see more of the trash, cans, because that's where they put their trash. But in the city itself, no. I
Yeah.
mean, here you don't have to walk anywhere and there's a trash can, but there's trash everywhere on the ground. I mean, where I live,
Exactly.
or where I live, where my office is here in Hillcrest, it's like you walk out in the street, it's just filthy, and there's a trash can right there. But people, we're not taught that as children,
Right.
how to respect where we live, and that's something that I hope changes someday.
Move to Japan.
Move to Japan. I appreciate that. It's like that's what I'm gonna be. Oh, Japan's terrible. Just like San Diego's horrible. Um,
Exactly. Well, Japan, Tokyo specifically is what, 36 million people, I think, in the proper.
this is what's wild. Isn't it like the most populated city in the
Yeah.
world?
Yeah.
And it moves like
The trains and
work. I'm like, oh, you missed your subway. Oh well, another one will come in 3 minutes.
yeah.
And it's just I've never seen such efficiency, and I'm sitting here going, this is how all humans need to live. There's no reason why we don't. Again, it boils down to if I were to put this to the concept of my book. It's our human story codes. It's what we think life is supposed to be, and
Yeah.
and we continue these patterns until finally if we have enough awareness in ourselves. Um, and imagine if everybody could understand that we literally control our own realities, and we all decide as a whole, as a human race, that this is the reality that we all want for ourselves. Let's all just do it. The problem is we're all human and we all have our own self-interest. And that's where I think having these real big movements of everybody that's like, why can't we all just get along? I'm like, well, because in order to get
Here
along,
am I.
I have to sacrifice, and no one wants to sacrifice.
But everybody can pick up their own trash. That should be a bare minimum.
This is true. I mean, metaphorically too. Like
Yeah.
when you think about the things that you're holding on to in your life, like just anybody listening, like think about the one thing in your life that you talk about the most. What's that one thing that just always gets under your skin? Is it that person? Is it a situation? Is it politics? What is it? And what is it that's the leading character in your life that is just like the boogeyman, the bad guy? Um, and then think of it as like that thing is literally trash on your lawn, and no one's going to come clean it up for you. You got to clean it up yourself. Like no one's going to clean up the trash on the streets here. You got to clean it up yourself.
Yeah.
We can't sit there and wait for someone to save us from ourselves. We are. And until it's funny how we all want a hero, right? And and we sit there and we complain and we victimize ourselves, and these bad actors or bad situations become leading roles in our lives,
Yeah.
and we allow them. I remember I went through some pretty rough stuff, a rough patch, while I was finishing up this book with a colleague of mine. It was pretty bad. I won't go into details, but it was enough to where I ended up with like a 3 month bout of IBS. Like, oh, I couldn't eat anything. Though I looked great, I was miserable. I lost weight, but I realized that this individual had become a leading character in my life. And I would tell everybody about this drama. Like, can you believe this happened? And random people, like you just meet somebody for the first time, and next thing you know, I'm
You're
telling them
sharing
the
the bad.
story. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm consumed,
Yeah.
until I finally realized, you know what? This, yeah, what happened to me wasn't fair, but life isn't fair. I didn't ask for it, but then again, I had to take the ownership of maybe I did. I did. I allowed this person into my life. And so I had to take that ownership. Well, you were the one that opened the door and let this person in, and
Yeah.
you ignored all the red flags from day one. And so, once I realized that I created it, just like Rumpelstiltskin, I named it
Get rid of it.
that, I got rid of it. So every time you look at trash on the street, just know that look at it as that's your own trash. And the only person that's going to clean it up is you. Go get it like a garbage bag and go clean that trash up, because no one else is going to do it. Especially not the city. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. Well, hey, Chat, thank you so much, man. I'm excited to finish off the book. So I'm gonna expect my copy.
Yes, I will get it in the mail. And I'll sign it.
Please do. Wait, so it's available on Amazon. You have it available on your website as well?
So my website links to Amazon and Barnes and Noble
Okay.
and some other independent booksellers, but I mean it is found, yeah, like Target online sells it as well. The best price right now is on Amazon, uh,
Okay.
of course. But yeah, Barnes and Noble does carry it. So if you're worried about, or not worried about, but if you are one of those that want your Barnes and Noble points, you can get it there.
Sure.
The Audible, in fact, right as we were starting our to talk, I got an email from my publisher that the audiobook has been I guess approved,
Oh, nice.
and
Are
it's
you the
already
voice?
I Yes. And yet I don't sound this bad. This is allergy, this is the California allergy voice. Um, but let me tell you, that was a labor of love.
Yeah.
Anybody who's read their own audiobook, kudos to you. And especially if you're a perfectionist like me, where
Yeah.
everyone has to be perfect. So yeah, it'll be out. I'm assuming hopefully soon.
Pretty soon.
Yeah, it'll be on Audible and in all of the different formats that you can get them.
And
So,
I'm kind of torn. I love the audibles because I listen to them when I drive.
yeah, that's what everybody says.
And I do a lot of driving because I'm up and down the coast for my job. But I also there's just something about reading a book too, though.
Yeah, I'm one of those readers where when I start reading a book, I can't put it down. So I'll
Yeah,
next thing you know, it's 2 in the morning and I'm like, oh my gosh,
I should
I'll
one
finish
more
a book.
chapter.
Yeah, I'll finish a book on an airplane because I fly, from I also live in Florida. So I go back and forth every month and I will read an entire book
Yeah,
on the way there. So that's usually when I get my reading done. Or if not, I'll be up till 2 in the morning. I can't put it down. The
like
last
I said, just
yeah,
one more chapter.
I know. I don't know if I should admit this, but the last book I read was Britney Spears' memoir. Heartbreaking. Oh, but I couldn't put that down either. I read it all. Like I read it in 2 sittings.
Wow.
So, but yeah, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully people can find some value in what I put to paper here,
Oh yeah.
and I would love to hear your feedback, and not just your feedback. I want to hear your
The
story.
results. Yeah.
I want to hear how you transformed your life, and I want to hear about the things that you were aware of that were in your way and how you released them. And I want to know how. Everybody has their own modules, right? What did you do to do it? How did you get there? Zero will take any road that you can take to get there, it will accept it.
I mean, for me, I can tell you, my dad, probably when I lived in San Diego, told me I had a bad voice. So for 40 years, I was like, I got a bad voice. And then never, and then here I am doing a podcast that's heard around the world now.
Right? Well, you know what? I'm proud of you that you didn't let that
Well, I did
into.
for a long time, so it's the same thing.
But at what point, let me ask, at what point in your life did you realize that that was not a real truth?
What? Probably for my wife, who just was like, "What are you talking about? You have a perfect face for radio." I'm like, "All right." But she's like, "You have a good voice." And then other people, when I started doing the show and I got more confident talking uh,
Yeah.
for lengths of time.
Isn't that funny how yeah, in my book, I talk about this and I know we need to wrap this up, but there's two kinds of truths in this world. There's a capital T truth, which is an absolute truth, like gravity, you know,
Yeah,
things that we can prove scientifically. And then there's these other truths that are lowercase truths that mask themselves as real truths. And at one point in your life, it was a capital T absolute truth that you had a terrible voice because that's what you believed.
yeah,
And then at one point, your wife was like, "No, you have a great voice." And all of a sudden, you realize, "Wait a minute, there's some awareness. No, there's another possibility out here that's not real. That's something that and you treated it like a capital T truth, just like my drama teacher has created that she's not a good writer,
yeah,
the capital T truth, and now that's been hindering her. And now, hopefully, now that had that light bulb that went off yesterday in our call, maybe now she can get that done. Just like now, look at you have this podcast, like you said, it's heard around the world. And imagine if you just still held on tightly to that false truth, we wouldn't be talking right now. and you
absolutely.
and you wouldn't have given my book an incredible, by the way, is so well written. So thank you. Not only do you have a good voice, but you're very thoughtful in your words.
Uh, for something like that, I had to be. That wasn't a throwaway, so
Yeah, I could tell. Like,
I
that
had to
was
do it.
this one came from the heart.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll make sure to put the link for the book on my website as well on our episode, and then obviously on all my socials. So
Yeah, the website is lawofzerobook.com. And there you can learn a little bit about, the philosophy of what it is, and links to where you can purchase it is all on
yeah,
there. And it links outwards to, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and things like that. So I don't
Perfect.
I don't do any fulfillment. The last thing I need to be doing is
Shipping.
actually, yeah, you see how long it's taken me a week now to get me your book. I mean, that's how good I am at shipping.
Quite all right.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, thank you so much for the time. And
Thank you for having me on.
congratulations.
No, it's always good to see you, and I follow
Yeah.
you on social media, so it's always fun. And next time we'll have to talk more, dive more into some fun travels, and I'd love to share more stories of how I use zero to navigate some crazy things. And one, I'll just give you a little teaser. I was in New Orleans when that terrorist attack happened.
Oh,
And I owe it to zero to always live in this space to tell me when I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Because I was on Bourbon Street and I had a bad feeling. I'm like, and I even told my friends, I'm like, we need to leave now. And we left. We took a side street, went back to the hotel, and it happened an hour later. So
that's
zero
bizarre.
zero not only can help you manage your life if you stay at zero, where you know when you're out of alignment,
Yeah.
save your life. So
Wow.
yeah. Well, we'll save that for another
Yeah,
time. But
you got it, buddy.
I have many more like that. So there's yeah, again, zero is going to help you manage your life. That's all I can say.
And I appreciate you saying it.
All right. Well, it's good
Thanks,
to see
Chad. Talk to you
you.
soon, bud.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.